Welcome to a very, 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 very special live edition of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Saturday, November 25th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The game against Michigan is today. I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman of Buckeyes Huddle, BuckeyeHuddle.com. That's actually the reason it is for very special today. It is the day, Tony. It is the day everyone waits for all year long. Ohio State, Michigan, number 2 versus number 3. I'm sure there are some other storylines we could talk about if we really think about it, but this feels like it could be a consequential football game for the future of two different football programs.
And it's for two very different reasons, yes. But which is one of the reasons why both teams want this one really, really badly, because I don't think any Ohio State head coach has ever wanted to send somebody out in such a fashion as could happen tomorrow, and likewise no Michigan players or coaches have probably ever wanted a game as badly as these guys do. So somebody is going to be devastated and somebody is going to be happier than they've ever been, and that's kind of what this rivalry should do every year almost.
Yeah, and there's always the what's at stake, and the first thing is bragging rights, and oh boy, there's so many bragging rights on the line and so much narrative on the line. It does feel like this is almost 3 games in one for Ohio State, because if Ohio State goes into Michigan Stadium and wins as an underdog in a year when everyone has, said this is the best Michigan team in decades at the least, boy, that the last couple of years potentially a little different. And the NCAA may wipe those 2 games away at some point in the future, but Ohio State could, at least from their perspective, kind of, get the old Mr. Clean magic eraser out and wipe those away, at least for themselves about this time tomorrow.
Yeah, if Ohio State wins, they won't need the NCAA to come in and vacate the previous 2 wins. They will have done it themselves based on the narrative that they will be able to write. And I think that is not lost on the Buckeyes, Ryan Day, the coaching staff, the fan base. I mean, everybody sees the writing on that wall if they can go ahead and put their own mark on that wall, and that's why it is more than just one game. It's like it's the game, but it's more than the game. It's more than any game previously, just based on the surroundings. The stakes are different, and we can argue which is the biggest game of this series of all time, and we probably will get into that. But there have never been these kinds of stakes in terms of what else it means other than the on-field football stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in a series with a game like 1969, a game like in 2006, I mean, there are plenty of these games that have had massive implications. This one's at least in that conversation. I don't know if it's at the top of the list. I kind of think it's in the family picture of the biggest ones.
It's not 1 versus 2.
It's not 1 versus 2, and some of it in terms of how big the game ends up being, you only figure out in retrospect if one of these teams goes on and wins the national championship. That makes it a little bit bigger. But if it's not number 1, it's in the top 10 of all time pretty clearly, and maybe the top 5. And when you think about the history of this series, that's pretty rare air. We are standing outside in the cold right now, waiting for Ohio State to arrive. Didn't notice? No. We were waiting for Ohio State's buses to arrive at their team hotel. The estimated arrival time, the ballpark, is probably about 20 minutes or so, give or take, maybe 15. And we're doing this very scientifically based on when someone tweeted out a picture of the buses being in Bowling Green, Ohio, about 40 minutes or so ago.
To be honest, I'm as an Ohioan, that is generally how we measure time. It's how far away someone was on a highway. So we know you can just do the math on that. We don't need the stones that the Vikings use. Like, we have our own way of measuring time and distance.
And if you can get a look at the picture of Deutsch Perry Stadium that everyone is required to take as they drive by, if you can tell how blurry it is, you can tell how fast they're going. That's the other piece of scientific Ohio travel calculation that you can do. So Ryan and the Buckeyes will be here probably, again, 6:15-ish, give or take. You might as well just hang out, make yourself at home. While you're watching, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Hit that bell so you get notified. This is not the last live show that we'll be doing on Friday night. We know you want to talk more about this game. We want to talk more about this game with you. So we'll have another one coming up Probably ballpark 8:30 or 9 p.m. on Friday night. We'll go for an hour, hour and a half. We'll see how long everyone wants to go. We will eventually have to sleep. We have a long day ahead of us tomorrow as well. But make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel there so you are part of that show as well.
Some bold predictions tonight's show as well.
Yes,
so
we will do our Buckeye Weekly Bold Prediction show coming up on that live stream a little later on when we're inside and a little warmer.
But we will open a window for effect.
Well, of course, it's the Big Ten. You got to play in the conditions. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this game. I'm sure we'll get to all the storylines at some point, but just the game itself.
Yeah.
The weather is supposed to be chilly, like high 20s, maybe in the low 30s by the time the game kicks off. But no big rain, no big snow, no wind, no meaningful wind. It should be chilly, but otherwise fine. So, it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to have a huge impact on this game.
No, it's football weather, overcast, just like you would expect. And the conditions, as Ryan Day says, everybody has to play in them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, cold, who does that affect more in terms of Ohio State or Michigan? I don't know that. I don't know that it benefits anybody more than the other. Obviously, with Ohio State's passing game, you would think they would prefer the better weather, the warmer weather. So maybe there's some impact there, but I don't think Ohio State relying on the run is such a bad thing either.
No, and Ohio State has been able to rely on the run a lot more the last few weeks since TreVeyon Henderson came back. The Ohio State running game looked one specific way kind of through the Penn State game, and then Mayan Williams kind of handed the baton off to TreVeyon Henderson. And it has looked a very different way for a good chunk of the last month. And they have not played incredible defenses the last, it was Wisconsin and then Michigan State and then Minnesota. None of those are incredible defenses, but they have done on the ground to those defenses sort of what you would expect a pretty good Ohio State run game to do.
Yeah, and TreVeyon Henderson obviously has been the main reason for that. He's rushed for over 100 yards, I think, in his last 4 games and well over, and looking good, and not just getting the bulk of his yards on one long carry. He's been consistent. He gets the 5 and the 6 and then the 25 and the 36. He builds on it and stays strong and stays productive. And right now, this is the best we've seen him as a Buckeye. He had flashes like this, but I think the best thing is for Ohio State, he's not flashing. This is just him right now. This isn't up and down. There are no peaks and valleys. It's just all peaks at this point.
Well, he averaged 9.7 yards a carry against, was that Minnesota, I think? It was either Minnesota or Michigan State, had 9.7 yards per carry and did not have, the one long run that, the 80-yard run that really skewed the numbers. It was just kind of, he's consistently getting 8 to 10 to 12 yards per carry in that range. I don't expect him to do that on Saturday, but what does he have to do? Set aside if he has a 60-yarder, we'll just sort of put that one to the side. What does he have to average for you to feel like, boy, Ohio State is in pretty good shape? I like Ohio State's chances. Not that they're guaranteed, but I like Ohio State's chances if he X yards per play.
If he's at 5 yards a carry, I like Ohio. I need to go back and go do that tonight and have shut down. I think that is running the ball a little bit, but 5 or better, I think that's pretty good for Ohio State.
And what's interesting is you're trying to get to 5 or so yards per carry. Part of that's going to depend on how does the offensive line play. And one of the reasons that that's so important is because if you can get to 5 yards per carry, that takes some of the pressure off the offensive line in the pass pro area, because that feels like, if there's a concern for Ohio State up front, I think it's Carson Hinsman in pass pro in particular, and really maybe in the run game too. But Kyle McCord getting pressure in his face is not the best Kyle McCord there is. You have seen him struggle under pressure at times this year. If they can keep him clean, give him time to throw, I think there are opportunities in the pass game, but a lot of that comes down to, does Kyle McCord have time to throw?
Yeah. Kevin, do we have a super chat?
Yeah, Uptown Daniel, the super chat. Let's talk about the video of Kyle McCord limping to the team bus.
The video that Adam King, Channel 10, posted of Kyle McCord limping to the team bus. Did you get a chance to watch it? I watched it.
I did not.
It's a very slight limp. I wouldn't make nearly as much of it as everybody else seems to be making of it. It just it's a guy that we know his ankle hurts, and it's I don't think it panned down to see if he was in a boot or anything like that. But when I heard about it, I expected it to be worse, like a significant limp. But this was I don't think it was that bad. And plus, we know his ankle hurts.
Right. He's been going back to, when did he hurt that? Was that against Purdue or Penn State? It was well over a month ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And he was at Wisconsin, all taped up. Big wrapping on his ankle. He's been like that every game since, and he's been progressing there. I'm sure it still is not great. If it's a high ankle sprain, that's not going to be healthy till maybe the bowl game. But he's been fine on it the last couple of weeks. And frankly, I don't think he's the quarterback with the bigger ankle issue this week. I mean, J.J. McCarthy has been dealing with a lower body injury that people are saying is an ankle thing. They kind of try to keep quiet. And, if it's those guys to be mobile and be able to cut and all that kind of stuff, it would be J.J. McCarthy, right?
Yeah, for sure. Escaping, and J.J. likes to escape. He'll turn and run. They will use him as a runner, use him a lot more as a runner than Ohio State does with Connor McCord. And also when they get to these matchup games, they use him to run the ball even more because they need to find yards on the ground. And he's got a bad leg, and he's got some sort of a shoulder thing, perhaps a collarbone thing that people are talking about as well. So he even said it on Monday that that was pretty rough on Saturday for him, and that's why I don't think you suddenly get healthy in 1 week, because he admitted he was hurting in that game last week. He didn't magically get better in 1 week.
Right. Yeah. He sort of framed it as like, oh, all good now, which I don't think that's probably going to be true. But how much does that limit him in terms of stepping into throws? How much does that limit him in terms of, avoiding the rush, getting out of the pocket, maybe extending plays with his legs? Because that's what makes him the most dangerous, is all of that kind of stuff. If he's kind of limited in those areas, that could be a big deal. And the other thing is, it's going to potentially limit him in terms of, one thing that could be a concern. We hear some sirens.
Well, I mean, there's no telling.
Yeah.
If there's
sirens, maybe them.
Yes. Yes. So we're hearing sirens, so that could be Ohio State's arrival. We will
what
see.
Time is it?
It's 6:05, so it was a little earlier than we're expecting. But
once you hit the border, like, you're going from 65 to 75.
That's true.
You're
so we'll keep an eye on that. But one thing that could make that a bigger issue is that Michigan, especially tackle Carson Barnhart, has not been great in pass pro the last couple of weeks. So that could put more pressure on McCarthy, which could create more issues with a bum ankle. That feels like, we got lots of questions this week about, if you could only choose one Buckeye to have a career game. And one of the options was JT Tuimoloau. And if JT Tuimoloau can get pressure, can get a couple sacks, this feels like a game where I'm expecting it to be defensive focused enough. If you can get Michigan off schedule with a sack, the TFL, that could be a drive killer.
Yeah, and especially with Michigan not getting a bunch of yards per play, if you make them get 13 yards on the second and third down to pick up the first down, that is a big loss for them. I thought one of the things that Maryland did pretty well is they know where JJ escapes to, and they would have somebody waiting. They would attack that as well. But you got to have athletes get after him and slow him down when he does try to make you move. And I don't think he's not as quick right now. He's not as nimble right now. And that makes him an even more attainable target. So it will be interesting to see how Jim Knowles comes after him. How much of the memory of last year of giving up those big plays sticks with him, and also how much the fact of like, I feel like I could be more aggressive with these guys because the guys on the back end are better than they were a year ago.
Yeah, the secondary has been so much night and day improved from a year ago. Outside of Lathan Ransom, they should be healthy in the secondary. They've given up one play all year, exactly one, of 40 yards or more, and that was that weird Fumblerooski fourth and run, like double handoff play that Rutgers ran. So just in terms of lineup and play action pass or whatever, no plays over 40 yards all season, no runs over 40 yards all season out of like a traditional running formation. I mean, it has been, as good a big play defense as they've had at Ohio State in a long time. I'm expecting Michigan to play a lot of too high safeties and make Ohio State be methodical going down the field. So even though Jim Knowles is playing a lot more conservatively and a lot less, blitz than he was a year ago, I'm still expecting him to probably be the more aggressive of the two coordinators.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It'll be. I'm interested to see what Michigan, how aggressive they are, what they do, because I agree that when they do attack and they blitz, will Kyle McCord read it, see it, and get it to that guy, and maybe some zone blitzes where you're trying to replace the blitzer and catch Kyle McCord like napping and throwing the ball and picking it off, something like that. But the knowledge that you're probably not expecting many points in this game. So a blitz, you have to be smart with it, because that could lead to the 7 points that is the difference in this game. So, but then also you can't stay too conservative and just let them 6, 8, 5 yards, snap after snap.
Well, it's this really catch-22 situation where if you're expecting a low-scoring game, you can't give up a touchdown. So you don't want to give up the big play. But also, you don't want to let them methodically get down to field goal range, because if it's 20-17, a field goal means a heck of a lot more than it does if you're playing in the 30s and the 40s.
Especially with limited possessions in this one, which you might see, because I don't know, Ohio State with tempo, if Michigan has like a 6-minute drive, do you want to go tempo right after that, or do you want to let's hold the ball for a little bit so that try to extend a possession and things like that? Like all of these different little nuances that come in terms of time of possession being what it is, but possession being important in a game like this where you might only have 9 attempts with the football.
Well, and the way Michigan has been playing on offense, they're not hitting a ton of big plays, certainly not on the ground. So in order for Michigan to pick up, put together a 6-minute drive, that's going to involve picking up a bunch of third downs, it feels like. So because it feels like Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards have been just kind of in the 4-ish yards per carry. Pretty much. I mean, I think they were both in the 4-something yards per carry all season long, which is just that's not what you have seen from them in the past. I don't know how much of that is those guys. I don't know how much of that is the offensive line is not quite what it has been in the past. Do you expect Michigan to be able to run the ball to the point where they're picking up a bunch of the third downs? I think 3rd and 2, I like their odds, but if they get behind behind schedule at all, I think that could be an issue for them trying to stay on the field.
Yeah, they're really good at getting into the end zone from the 1, but they get stopped quite a bit on short yards outside of the red zone. And they should not be able to run the ball very well against this Ohio State defense. That doesn't mean they're not going to try. I don't know if Michigan rushes for more than 160, that to me is a big number for what Ohio State has been able to do defensively. And Michigan has not been that good running the ball. They've just run it a lot, and they build up numbers. Last week against Maryland, averaged 3.3 yards per carry, but ran for 160 or 180 yards, something like that, because they ran it 45 times. If they run it 45 times in this one, it almost doesn't matter what they're averaging, because they're just controlling the ball, and clearly they're picking up some third downs.
Right.
And the third downs against Penn State, they were picking some up on the ground. Michigan that led to scoring drives because they were attacking Manny Diaz's blitzes with the running game. Yeah. And so I'm sure Ohio State obviously watched that game and saw what Michigan likes to do. And they will run the ball on 3rd and long. They did it, I think, half of their 3rd and longs last week, especially if you've got J.J. McCarthy banged up. They're going to try to get some cheap ones, some sneaky ones in there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Michigan's success on the ground is going to depend on whether Ohio State thinks J.J. McCarthy can run and whether J.J. McCarthy actually can run. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but possibly. Because if you have to account for the quarterback in the run game, that changes your numbers a little bit. If you don't, if it's just going to be a handoff and you're basically daring him to run, the way that teams have treated Kyle McCord this year, okay, you're going to show us you're going to run a read. Okay, we'll believe that he's going to keep it when he does. I think I don't think Ohio State can be quite that bold in the run game, but I think Michigan might have to show that they're willing to run McCarthy and that McCarthy's able to run before Ohio State totally buys into that.
Yeah, I think you force him to keep it on the reads a couple of times. 1, to see how healthy he is, and 2, to try to hit him to make him less healthy. So yeah, you'd much rather have him carrying the ball. Although right now, he is honestly one of their most explosive carrier. Not now, maybe because he's hurt, but there have been weeks where he has been their most explosive guy because he can get out on the edge. And everybody else, Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings, up the middle, it's not nearly as productive as he was able to be sometimes getting out there. And he's a viable weapon when he's healthy. When he's not healthy, you've got to see how much of a weapon he is. I think you forced their hand to show that you, for one, will pull it. And then two, what does he look like when he's doing that?
And we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll see. Have to see how much he is willing to pull it and run. I'm sure. My assumption is this is going to be like JT Barrett when Urban Meyer was here, and it was, he'd run 2 times against Rutgers and 4 times against Maryland, and then 18 times against Penn State. I don't think he's running 18 times against Ohio State, but he was two carries for -7 yards last week against Maryland. Had 8 for 34 or something against Penn State, where it's like just enough that okay, you made a couple plays, you extended a couple drives, but you weren't obviously not the main focus of the offense. And the week before that against Purdue, I think he had negative rushing yards in that one too, where he has very clearly they have not been using him on the ground as much. But I think they're going to use him more this weekend.
Removing sacks, if I set the number at 7.5, I feel like 8.5 is for just carries, scrambles,
rushes,
non-sacks. Like a 7.5, I might go over 8.5 because Penn State was 8. I just don't know that he's healthy enough to carry the ball that much. So it's a difficult number.
Yeah, it is. It is. What's wrong with the Michigan run offense? Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. We've been all year. We keep waiting for Donovan Edwards to look like Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum to look like Blake Corum. I don't know that Blake Corum is 100% after that knee injury last year. I don't understand what's going on with Donovan Edwards because he's made plays out of the backfield in the throw game, which you've seen over the years, but just running the ball, it just feels like he's constantly at 3-something yards per carry.
Yeah, he has been. He's getting tackled in the backfield. They don't get to the second level that often, for one, and they're not necessarily making the first guy miss, and they're just running into a bunch of guys. And it's something we've talked about at the start of the season with Ohio State when they would bring in extra linemen to try to move piles.
Yeah.
Michigan will run with 6 offensive linemen a lot, 6 offensive linemen and a tight end. There's just a lot of bodies there. And now that's not new for them. They've been able to work around it last year and year before that. But right now there's not a lot of there. And getting stopped early downs and then forcing something to happen on second down where it's like, now we're 2nd and 9. What do we do? Well, let's try to run it again. Now you're at 3rd and 7. And the conservative aspect of their offense, it just hasn't worked as well as it did last year. And I think a lot of it is the offensive line. But again, I don't think the running backs are playing nearly as well as they did last year. I think Corum, as you said, might have an excuse. I don't know what Donovan Edwards, what's going on there. But the thing with him is he has the potential to go at any moment. And that's what you prepare for. Yeah, that's the guy you prepare for. Blake Corum getting stopped in the backfield and kicking it out for another 52 yards. That's what you prepare for. Mm-hmm. You don't prepare for the 4-yard to carry Blake Corum and a 3-yard to carry Donovan Edwards.
Yeah, it does feel like if Michigan gets down to the 2-yard line, Blake Corum's going to score. Yeah. Like he has just been he's been able to do that all season. Feels like if they get down there, he's going to do that. Part of getting down there may be, okay, how well does J.J. McCarthy throw the ball? Because he was at 50-something% last week against Maryland. He's been kind of around there a few times recently. Roman Wilson was out for a good chunk of last week's game. I'm assuming he's going to be back. I don't think we've heard an answer one way or the other, but this is one of those games where if you can play, you're going to play. Cornelius Johnson had a big play or two last year against Ohio State. Colson Loveland, the tight end, had a big touchdown against Ohio State last year. I'm not expecting J.J. McCarthy to have, complete 80% of his passes. Yeah. And I'm not expecting J.J. McCarthy to hit as many long ones as he did last year because several of those were just like flat out busts, just like complete busts in the secondary. And they have done a better job of not having that happen this year. Where does, what is a winning stat line for J.J. McCarthy? Because I'm assuming Michigan's not going to just be able to run for 300 yards. Yeah. So J.J. McCarthy is going to have to play, they're going to have to throw the ball some. But what does that look like? What is a winning stat line look like for J.J. McCarthy?
Well, he was 12 for 24 last year against Ohio State, but had obviously 300 yards passing. I think are those the buses coming in right there? I believe those are the
Yes,
buses.
I think that's buses.
Looks like the team is perhaps arriving.
maybe.
I saw there's more buses coming in. There's the police. There are the police. No sirens though, which is nice.
Yes,
Because this is not a Buckeye Weekly podcast. So they are coming around. The crowd here is getting excited, obviously. I believe 6 buses departed from Columbus. So obviously players we're good. Waiting for coming around the corner here, as Kevin will show you. Once they get past the RV, there's the first bus. Ryan Day will probably be on that one, so I will back away and try to get him. There is the Michigan State Patrol. And we are going to chase this bus down. Get over here and get Ryan Day right out of here. Ryan Day in bus 1, seat 1, bus 1. He'll come out here and we will grab him. I believe. Unless they have pulled a fast. He'll be popping out here shortly. We've got all the television and everybody else here waiting, so this should be the one. All right, there's RJ.
Another day.
That's right. Here's the head coach.
You said you wanted to get on the bus today with confidence. Did you feel like you did that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, just being on the bus on this trip, you just think back on all the different teams that have made that same trip, and to see some of the people, waiting for the bus to go by and waving their Ohio State flags, it meant a lot. It was a great bus trip.
Did you see, what did you see when you looked in your players' eyes this week?
You can see it. I mean, we've been working towards this all year, and they've had a great look in their eye and can't wait to play in the game.
Brian, number 1 team in the nation against the score, against the number 2 team in the nation against the score. What should people anticipate tomorrow?
A great game. Yeah, again, going back to some of the great games that have been played in this rivalry before, and you can say it's never been bigger than it is this weekend, and our guys know that, and so we're gonna have a great night here. Continue our preparation, wake up with great energy, and go play our best game of the year.
All hands on deck, as far as you're concerned.
All hands on deck, that's for sure. Yeah.
Got a new wrinkle in the playbook this week?
No, we've had good preparation. We have. I mean, the guys are working really hard, and we're going to go put it on the field. Can't wait to play in a game.
What did you say to the guys before they got on the bus?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, we leave that with the team. But we had a good good walkthrough in the indoor. Had some really good meetings, and got on the bus and ready to roll.
How'd Kyle come?
Seriousness and purpose when we saw you guys on Tuesday. Who's been leading that this week?
Well, there's a bunch of leaders in this group, a bunch of guys who played this game, and know how much this game means not only to our team, but to so many other people across BuckeyeNation.
What's it finally like to get up here inside the state and know that this game is right around the corner?
Yeah, it's been a long road to get here, and it started last year early in the winter, and here we are. So time to go get on the field and go play and trust our training. Thanks guys.
Thanks, man.
All right, that's the head